Looks like I am live. Thank you so much for joining me. I am live on, looks like Facebook and YouTube. So I'm super grateful to be here. I'm going to be reading The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace D. Wattles. I started yesterday. I said I was going to come back in on Monday and do, but today's a good day and I decided to come in and read it. Hope that's all right. All right. So I'm going to cover a little bit about the book because I didn't yesterday, but I will. So today, he gives instructions. Read this book with an open mind. Let me warn you ahead of time as you begin reading this book, some or much of what you read will challenge your present thinking and long-held beliefs. So it will challenge your BS. And BS, y'all, is belief system. It certainly did mine. What should you do when that happens? You've got it. Just keep reading. You see, much of what you read in this book will be contrary to what you may have read or heard before, and your initial reaction may be to reject these new ideas. But I can assure you that as you continue reading, it will all start to make sense, and you'll soon begin to see just how all the pieces fit together to form a complete, simple, practical, and easy to understand step-by-step system for getting rich. After you finish reading this book once, then you can go back and begin to study and apply the material. To help you do that, I've included a suggested study plan in Appendix C. In addition, to help you get even more from this book, I made a special arrangement to enroll you in the Science of Getting Rich email course absolutely free. Okay, don't know what that is. All right, so two important points to bring to your attention. First, Wallace D. Wattles wrote this book in the style of his time, frequently using the masculine gender to represent all people. Mr. Wattles makes it clear in his writings that the principles of which he writes applies equally to men and women. I suggest that you view the masculine terminology in a generic manner. Second, Mr. Wattles was a Christian. As such, he uses quotations and examples from the Bible and the teachings of Jesus. As you read this book, you will quickly discover that his aim is not to convert you to his religion. He uses these quotations and examples to illustrate universal laws that are at work in our lives. These universal laws apply to each of us, just like the law of gravity does, regardless of your religion, if any. Although The Science of Getting Rich was first published over 90 years ago, the scientific principles and the detailed plan of action put forth by Wallace D. Wattles are as valuable today as they were then. Mr. Wattles wrote the truth. Truth is still truth. What was true then is still true today. Truth doesn't change with the passing of time. All righty, so without further ado, I'm going to get into, I think it was chapter 3 that we were on. The opportunity monopolized? Yes. No man is kept poor because opportunity has taken away from him. Because other people have monopolized the wealth and have put a fence around it, you may be shut off from engaging in business in certain lines, but there are other channels open to you. Probably it would be hard for you to get control of any of the great railroad systems. That field is pretty well monopolized. But the electric railway business is still in its infancy and offers plenty of scope for enterprise. And it will be but a very few years until traffic and transportation through the air will become a great industry. And in all its branches will give employment to hundreds of thousands and perhaps to millions of people. All right, let's see. Why not turn your attention to the development of aerial transportation instead of competing with J.J. Hill and others for a chance in the steam railway world? It is quite true that if you are a workman in the employ of the Steel Trust, you have very little chance of becoming the owner of the plant in which you work. But it is also true that if you will commence to act in a certain way, you can soon leave the employ of the Steel Trust. You can buy a farm from 10 to 40 acres and engage in business as a producer of foodstuffs. There is great opportunity at this time for men who will live upon small tracts of land and cultivate the same intensively. Such men will certainly get rich. You may say that it is impossible for you to get the land, but I am going to prove to you that it is not impossible and that you can certainly get a farm if you will go to work in a certain way. At different periods, the tide of opportunity sets in different directions according to the needs of the whole and the particular stage of social evolution which has been reached. At present in America, it is setting toward agriculture and the allied industries and professions. Today, opportunity is open before the farmer in his line more than before the factory worker in his line. It is open before the businessman who supplies the farmer more than before, the one who supplies the factory worker, and before the professional man who waits upon the farmer more than before the one who serves the working class. There is abundance of opportunity for the man who will go with the tide instead of trying to swim against it. So the factory workers, either as individuals or as a class, are not deprived of opportunity. The workers are not being kept down by their masters. They are not being ground by the trust and combinations of capital. As a class, they are where they are because they do not do things in a certain way. If the workers of America choose to do so, they could follow the example of their brothers in Belgium and other countries and establish great department stores and cooperative industries. They could elect men of their own class to office and pass laws favoring the development of such cooperative industries, and in a few years, they could take peaceable possession of the industrial field. The working class may become the master class whenever they will begin to do things in a certain way. The law of wealth is the same for them as it is for all others. This they must learn, and they will remain where they are as long as they continue to do as they do. The individual worker, however, is not held down by the ignorance or the mental slothfulness of his class. He can follow the tide of opportunity to riches, and this book will tell him how. No one is kept in poverty by a shortness in the supply of riches. There is more than enough for all. A palace as large as the Capitol at Washington might be built for every family on earth from the building material in the United States alone. And under intensive cultivation, this country would produce wool, cotton, linen, and silk enough to clothe each person in the world. Finer than Solomon was arrayed in all his glory, together with food enough to feed them luxuriously. The visible supply is practically inexhaustible, and the invisible supply really is inexhaustible. Everything you see on earth is made from one original substance out of which all things proceed. New forms are constantly being made and the older ones are dissolving, but all are shapes assumed by one thing. There's no limit to the supply of formless stuff or original substance. The universe is made out of it, but it was not all used in the making the universe. The spaces in, through, and between the forms of the visible universe are permeated and filled with the original substance, with the formless stuff, with the raw material of all things. 10,000 times as much as has been made might still be made, and even then, we should not have exhausted the supply of the universal raw material. No man, therefore, is poor because nature is poor or because there is not enough to go around. Nature is an inexhaustible storehouse of riches. The supply will never run short. Original substance is alive with creative energy and is constantly producing more forms. When the supply of building material is exhausted, more will be produced. When the soil is exhausted so that foodstuffs and materials for clothing will no longer grow upon it, it will be renewed and more soil will be made. When all the gold and silver has been dug from the earth, if man is still in such a stage of social development that he needs silver and gold and silver, more will be produced from the formless. The formless stuff responds to the needs of man. It will not let him be without any good thing. This is true of man collectively. The race as a whole is always abundantly rich, and if individuals are poor, it is because they do not follow the certain way of doing things which makes the individual man rich. The formless stuff is intelligent. It is stuff which thinks. It is alive, and it is always impelled toward more life. It is natural and inherent impulse of life to seek to live more. It is the nature of intelligence to enlarge itself and of consciousness to seek to extend its boundaries and find fuller expression. The universe of forms has been made by a formless living substance, throwing itself into form in order to express itself more fully. The universe is a great living presence, always moving inherently towards more life and fuller functioning. Nature is formed for the advancement of life. It is impelling motive is the increase of life. For this cause, everything can possibly minister to life. It is bountifully provided. There can be no lack unless God is to contradict himself and nullify his own works. You are not kept poor by lack in the supply of riches. It is a fact which I shall demonstrate a little farther on, that even the resources of the formless supply are at the command of the man or woman who will act and think in a certain way. Chapter 4, the first principle in the science of getting rich. Thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks, and the thought of form in this substance produces the form. Original substance moves according to its thoughts. Every form and process you see in nature is the visible expression of a thought, an original substance. As the formless stuff thinks of a form, it takes that form, and as it thinks of a motion, it makes that motion. That is the way all things were created. We live in a thought world, which is part of a thought universe. The thought of a moving universe extended throughout formless substance, and the thinking stuff moving according to that thought took the form of systems of planets and maintains that form. Thinking substance takes the form of its thought and moves according to the thought. Holding the idea of a circling system of suns and worlds, it takes the form of these bodies and moves them as it thinks. Thinking the form of a slow-growing oak tree, it moves accordingly and produces the tree, though centuries may be required to do the work. In creating, the formless seems to move according to the lines of motion it has established. The thought of an oak tree does not cause the instant formation of a full-grown tree, but it does start in motion the forces which will produce the tree along established lines of growth. Every thought of form held in thinking substance causes the creation of the form, but always, or at least generally, along lines of growth and action already established. The thought of a house of a certain construction, if it were impressed upon formless substance, might not cause the instant formation of the house, but it would cause the turning of creative energies already working in trade and commerce into such channels as to result in the speedy building of the house. And if there were no existing channels through which the creative energy could work, then the house would be formed directly from the primal substance without waiting for the slow processes of the organic and inorganic world. No thought of form can be impressed upon original substance without causing the creation of the form. Man is a thinking center and can originate thoughts. All the forms that man fashions with his hands must first exist in his thought. He cannot shape a thing until he has thought that thing. And so far, man has confined his efforts wholly to the work of his hands. He has applied manual labor to the world of form, seeking to change or modify those already existing. He has never thought of trying to cause the creation of new forms by impressing his thoughts upon formless substance. When man has a thought form, he takes material from the forms of nature and makes an image of the form which he has in his mind. He has so far made little or no effort to operate with formless intelligence to work with the Father. He has not dreamed that he can do what he seeth the Father doing. Man reshapes and modifies existing form by manual labor. He has given no attention to the question whether he may not produce things from formless substance by communicating his thoughts to do it. We propose to prove that he may do so, to prove that any man or woman may do so, and to show how. As our first steps, we must lay down three fundamental propositions. First, we assert that there is one original formless stuff in substance, from which all things were made. All the seemingly many elements are but different presentations of one element. All the many forms found in the organic and inorganic nature are but different shapes made from the same stuff. All this stuff is thinking stuff. A thought held in it produces the form of thought. Thought in thinking substances produces shapes. Man is a thinking center capable of original thought. If man can communicate his thought to original thinking substance, he can cause the creation or formation of the thing he thinks about. To summarize this, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thoughts upon formless substance, can cause the things he thinks about to be created. It may be asked if I can prove these statements without going into details. I answer that I can do so both by logic and experience. Reasoning back from the phenomena of thought and form, I come to one original thinking substance, and reasoning forward from this thinking substance, I come to man's power to cause the formation of the thing he thinks about. And by experiment, I find the reasoning true, and this is my strongest proof. If one man who reads this book gets rich by doing what it tells him to do, that is evidence in support of my claim. But if every man who does what it tells him to do gets rich, that is positive proof until someone goes through the process and fails. The theory is true until the process fails, and this process will not fail. For every man who does exactly what this book tells him to do will get rich. I have said that men get rich by doing things in a certain way. And in order to do so, men must become able to think in a certain way. A man's way of doing things is a direct result of the way he thinks about things. To do things in a way you want to do them, you will have to acquire the ability to think the way you want to think. This is the first step toward getting rich. To think what you want to think is to think truth, regardless of appearances. Every man has the natural and inherent power to think what he wants to think, but it requires far more effort to do so than it does to think the thoughts which are suggested by appearances. To think according to appearances is easy. To think truth regardless of appearances is laborious. It requires the expenditure of more power than other work man is called to perform. There is no labor for which most people shrink as they do from that of sustained and consecutive thought. It is the hardest work in the world. This is especially true when truth is contrary to appearances. Every appearance in the visible world tends to produce a corresponding form in the mind, which observes it. And this can only be prevented by holding the thought of the truth. To look upon the appearance of disease will produce the form of disease in your own mind and ultimately in your body, unless you hold the thought of the truth, which is that there is no disease. It is only in appearance, and the reality is health. To look upon the appearances of poverty will produce corresponding forms in your mind, unless you hold to the truth that there is no poverty, there is only abundance. To think health when surrounded by appearances of disease, or to think riches when in the midst of appearances of poverty, requires power, but he who acquires this power becomes a master mind. He can conquer fate, and he can have what he wants. This power can only be acquired by getting hold of the basic fact which is behind all appearances, and that fact is that there is one thinking substance for which and by which all things are made. Then we must grasp the truth that every thought held in this substance becomes a form, and that man can so impress his thoughts upon it as to cause them to take form and become visible things. When we realize this, we lose all doubt and fear, for we know that we can create what we want to create. We can get what we want to have and become what we want to be. As a first step toward getting rich, you must believe the three fundamental statements given previously in this chapter. In order to emphasize them, I repeat them here. There is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which in its original state permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought in this substance produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. You must lay aside all other concepts of the universe than this monistic one, and you will dwell upon this until it is fixed in your mind and you become your habitual thought. Read these creed statements over and over again. Fix every word upon your memory and meditate upon them until you firmly believe what they say. If a doubt comes to you, cast it aside as a sin. Do not listen to arguments against this idea. Do not go to churches or lectures where a contrary concept of things is taught or preached. Do not read magazines or books which teach a different idea. If you get mixed up in your faith, all efforts will be in vain. Do not ask why these things are true, nor speculate as to how they can be true. Simply take them on trust. The science of getting rich begins with the absolute acceptance of this faith. All right, so I will read chapter 5 starting probably tomorrow. We're going to do chapter 5, The Science of Getting Rich. I am so excited. I've been wanting to read this book forever, and now I am reading it to you. It is such an amazing time. I absolutely love this book. Hey, Tiffany, thank you for joining. This was The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace D. Wattles. It is an amazing book. I'm still reading it as well, so I'm understanding it the same as you. So, like, this is my first time reading it too. But I've been wanting to read it for a minute, and so here I am reading it to you. And I truly do enjoy this. And but I got stuff to do, so I got to get up from here. This has been great. It's been amazing. I will, like I said, I will come back on tomorrow and read chapter 5. Let's see. Yep, chapter 5, Increasing Life. Let me put that in the comments. Chapter 5, Increasing Life. We're going to start tomorrow. And those of you that are joining me that would love to join me in my 8 weeks to Limitless program, it is amazing. I cannot wait to do it. It is, you get 8 weeks of me. So it's going to be amazing. I absolutely am excited about it. It's going to be 8 sessions with me, one-to-one sessions, and I call it 8 weeks to Limitless. So we're going to meet for 8 weeks, and I'm going to help you to move forward through your life, through some of the challenges and the things that are coming for you, because many times people are at a place where, you're making the money that you want, you bought your house, you got your car, your kids, everything, but you feel something is missing. Like there's a disconnect somewhere inside of you. And so that is where I come in, and that is what my 8 weeks to Limitless session is going to be. Sessions are about helping you to navigate through that space and make that connection to your soul. Also, join me weekly for Connecting to Your Soul, a healing activation. I'm super excited. I did the first one on yesterday. I got to sit down and figure out a good day for me to do it. So I'll come out with a post and let you guys know when I'm going to be doing that, because it's a healing activation. I had such a good time yesterday. I focused on, anxiety. I focused on anxiety and hopelessness. I think it was one other thing. And then we did healing work around those things. So if those are things that are, that you are dealing with and you would like to come on and, get some of this healing work, get it. Because those are free sessions that I'm doing once a week. Connect to Your Soul, a healing activation. So thank you so much for hanging out with me. Thank you for joining me today. And those of you that are catching the replay, make sure you put hashtag replay for me. That way I can thank you and share where you're watching from, because I absolutely love to see where people are watching from all over the planet. It's interesting to me, because the fact that we can be here in the States and have people watching in Africa, in Australia, in the UK, in Canada, all these places is so amazing. Portugal, I've got people watching from Spain, all over the Caribbean, in the Mexico and Jamaica and Dominican Republic, Panama, Costa Rica, different places. So I'm super, super grateful just that we have this opportunity to share in this way. So again, I'll be back on tomorrow to start on chapter 5, The Science of Getting Rich. And like I said earlier, make sure that you're listening to this. Just listen. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to do any of that stuff, because it is contrary to many things that maybe you have heard in the past, or things that you feel like you know, and contrary to your BS, which is your belief system. So it's contrary to that for many of us. And so just listen to it and just allow it to flow through you. That's the advice that I have for this book. Listen to it and allow it to flow through you. And then what starts happening is you start getting aha moments. Sometimes you'll dream of something. Sometimes it'll just show up for you in your waking hours. Sometimes if you meditate, sometimes it'll show up there. So just be aware that, these things are happening for you, and that this is information that is amazing, although it may be challenging in, your thought process. Has been for mine, I have to say. But I know that it is amazing, and I know that it is a good book and that it is helpful, for us in our life. So again, thank you for joining me. I hope that you guys have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, weekend, whatever it is for you, wherever you are in the world. But I'm going to get off here, and I will definitely be back on tomorrow to cover chapter 5 of this book and talk about some more stuff. And for those of you that missed my Sunday service, make sure you go back and catch the replay, because it's on. It's on YouTube, my YouTube channel, and also on Facebook. So wherever you want to catch it, you can. It's on either one of those stations. So I'm super, super grateful for that, and just loving life and loving the fact that, we are here to help all in this area. So again, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. I hope that everything is well in your world, and have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, or weekend, whatever it is for you. Bye now.